Well, thank you, Allison. That was absolutely fabulous. I think if anybody hasn't read the book, you've just presented something amazing about this groundbreaking magazine. It's modern in every sense of the word in a genre that there was no real precedent for that. I was thinking as you were talking, what would be the closest corollary to this, that it's talking about an artist and their art and serious stuff, social issues, things like that. I'm thinking, what, Downbeat maybe? I mean, this is
Yeah.
way ahead of the curve in terms of other what we think of as rock journalism. And TeenSet, to most people, they probably haven't heard of it at all. Datebook gets more
Yeah.
mentioned because of the bigger than Jesus thing, but
Yes.
certainly Rolling Stone has been, establishing their legend from day one and keeping going as long as
Yes.
they could. So it's just an amazing thing that this thing was out there that you found and ran with because it's an amazing story. So I guess my first question would be, you recall your moment of achieving consciousness in this, that there was an untold story, an amazing untold story
Yeah.
hiding in plain sight?
Oh, so actually, this is a great source for anyone who doesn't have it. In 1964, Chet Flippo, he becomes a Rolling Stone editor later. For UT, he writes a thesis about Rolling Stone and rock journalism, and he interviewed Judy. So that was where I heard about TeenSet. That's where I read it, right there. I've actually recently shared this with somebody who's
A whole
finishing
bunch
something
of
for Rolling
people.
Stone. I'm sorry?
Mine were there like 25 people. Cool.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Um, anyways, so yeah, the so going to finding that thesis and reading through it, I just was completely blown away. It's only a few pages. It's double spaced, like, it's old school typed. It's really great. But I thought, like, why don't I know this? Why haven't I thought about this? And what's really important about that question, I want to answer that, not just in finding it, but it made me rethink what I thought about teen fan magazines, what I thought about 16 and Tiger Beat and all the other magazines that even I read and loved. It made me really realize how great they were, and how I just kind of, as Norma Coates has said in her work, I was buying into this super rock narrative of what is and isn't authentic. I mean, and that's part of the conversation. It goes in depth. It is a you know, it's not a light read. It goes in depth in conversations of genre, because what's really cool about TeenSet is it does show that change in how we talk about genre, and where words like pop becomes kind of a dirty word, uh, associated with girls, and rock becomes, authentic and meaningful by, Altamont era. And in the book, I actually say that I think if Monterey Pop would have happened 3 years later, it would have been called the Monterey Rock Festival, based on the way the critics were writing.
Right. That's a really good point. Um, I was going to ask you something else about other magazines. Teen Set, it came to my attention just because it was something that had Beatle covers.
Mhm.
This was something nobody took seriously if you were a rock fan, because you just thought, it's just lightweight girl stuff. There's this. But Datebook was the other thing that I was wondering about. Did you do any research on that? Because that's the one that gets all the notoriety. As something I know far less about it than you do, but I do know that it's sort of presented itself as something a bit more sophisticated and content rich than your average teen directed magazine. Did you do much investigating into the history of that? I know you got things in the book about
Mhm.
that, people that work for it.
Yeah, so there's been some stuff written. Brian Ward wrote a really good piece on Datebook, and specifically the more popular than Jesus article, the Howlin' and Lives by Maureen Cleave, from the London Evening Standard, excuse me. That article was reprinted in Datebook, and it caused people to start burning Beatles records, and it caused, obviously an uproar. And I know Debbie Gindler's here, and I know she can talk about that. But we know that that happened, and we know people blame Datebook, but some people use that to talk about how teen fan magazines are sensational. But Art Unger, who was the publisher at the time, um, his motive wasn't actually, he probably thought the other comment, which I don't want to say, was, it had a very explicit word on the front, and fair enough why they did it. But him and Danny Fields had a very different reason for what they were doing, right? They I would say that the early date books are very teen type, not so much music focused. But as date book progresses in the mid to late 60s, it gets pretty radical, and until it changes to teen date book, which is interesting. But yeah, date book is a really cool magazine, and I don't think it should be dismissed over the More Popular Than Jesus thing, because it does have a lot of cool cultural conversations. Date book as well as Flip starts to go in that direction too.
That's an interesting thing you just said about running toward the teen identification when TeenSet was running away from it. Do you think it was because they felt burned over the Jesus thing, or is there another reason?
Possibly, or it's just the idea that, where the money was. For example, if you look at an issue, which I have one here, of 16 from 60, I think this is 67. No, hold on. I'm just gonna make sure I have my date right before I say something wrong. I have one of my 16s here, and let me just make sure I get the date on here. Okay, doesn't have the title page. Yeah, this is 67. I was right. Okay, good.
Okay.
I should not doubt myself. This is a 16 from 1967, which looks very different than what TeenSet looked like, right? But
Nez is missing already.
Huh?
Nez is missing already.
Yeah, and but it's very colorful, very cartoon-like. I mean, this is pretty typical of 16. And as 16 goes forward, Gloria Stavers had a very different direction with the magazine. And as stars became younger and younger, the magazine became focused on younger stars too, as you go into the 70s and look at Michael Jackson and Donny Osmond. But 16 definitely doesn't go with the counterculture, whereas Judith Sims did. I mean, she was a part of it. I want to point out, though, you mentioned Tiger Beat. Tiger Beat actually, in the beginning, was pretty cool. This is a mod mag issue, and they had really great covers. This is when Lloyd Thaxton he was a TV show host. He was still sponsoring Tiger Beats. But they also go much younger, too, as they go forward. TeenSet does pack in 69. It just ends. Not enough advertising. Although I will say 16 didn't advertise. They had only their own products within the magazine, which is pretty cool. But TeenSet did because of its origins within Capital and in that publishing world. So it was a very different magazine. But yeah,
and I'd wondered at what point, because even the issue that I've gotten, one of the ones you displayed, this poster stuff, clearly there's something to sell to kids. And it's fabulous if you got them. And I do have my poster in here, which I'm grateful for.
Oh, you do? I have all the posters. I want you to see, this is the Jim Marshall poster. I'm going to stand up and hold this one because it's so cool. And I'm not talking about this Jim Marshall, although he's cool too.
I met him.
Oh, did you really?
In the 90s.
This is, I hope I don't break my poster. I have a couple of these Hendrix ones, but this is one of Jim Marshall's Monterey pop photos that you may have seen, even if you're not a big music person. This is a poster that came in TeenSet.
Wow.
Can you all see that? And then
that's
on
great.
The back, oh, I hate handling these. On the back, we have this kind of inconspicuous Lennon picture.
Wow.
Anyways, let me just fold this really quick. But this
Who took the Lennon?
I'm not sure. It seems more like I'm not actually sure who took that one, but Jim Marshall took this fantastic one of Jimmy, which has been used multiple. If you go online, you can find Jimmy. I call it Jimmy warming up at Monterey because it wasn't the actual performance, it was the warm up. But this is one of the most influential photos. And it was a fold out with an open shirt Jimi Hendrix for, again, if we argue a white girl's bedroom's wall in 1967, 68, that's incredible. How awesome is that this is the photo? There is a Davy Jones one. And there's a Buffalo Springfield one, which is pretty cool because you don't find them covered in very many teen fan magazines.
That's just unbelievable high level curation of who they're presenting and how they're presenting them. That's amazing. One thing I wanted to ask before I forget, and I will get to the listener questions, but you've done an amazing job selling the value and worthiness of this as something that was way ahead of the curve in high-level rock journalism before the term and the parameters had really been designed. It was sort of inventing it as it went along. And the Jim Marshall photography, I know you've had go through a lot of hoops and process to get this book published and get that stuff into your book, which I will tell anybody listening who hasn't seen the book yet, stunning. And the Bob Bonus stuff as well. It's just amazing great graphics and art design you've got in this book. But I was wondering, do you know who owns the content? And is there any possibility that something could be curated and put out there as a collection of the writings from TeenSet?
I do know who owns the content, yes, and I have permission to use it. So
Oh,
yes.
okay. But I mean, in
Um,
terms of beyond your book, is it something that someday there's best of Rolling Stones and crap like that?
yeah, I think like the day after my book came out, someone on Amazon went and gave it 2 stars because they said this wasn't a collection of TeenSet. I don't need to know teen. I don't need anyone to convince me TeenSet is great. And I took
Read
it
the description.
at first I was so upset, but then I took it as like at least they love TeenSet. You know, at least they get it, you know. So I took it with stride in the end. So but yeah, read the description of what your book is about. But yeah, you're right on the imagery. I want to show because I know I have some Dylan scholars here. Um with copyright, I don't want to put any photos that like on the screen, but since it's in the book, I can show you. This is a
Editorial use.
yeah. This is of Bob Dylan in the streets rolling the tire. You might know that. That was in TeenSet first.
Wow.
Cool, right?
Is that a Marshall photo?
Yeah, that's a Marshall photo. There's a
Okay.
few others. I would like to point out, this is a Bob Bonus one of the Stones. If you're a Stones fan, of course, it's a really groovy one. I love that one. That was in TeenSet first, probably at all, and it was also in his book, but that's it. One of
I
the
was going to
things
say
that's
there was
really
a
cool.
collection of unseen Stones photos
Yeah,
published
and
as
that's the
well.
first time you would have seen it. And other than that, it was
Mhm.
in TeenSet. And then, of course, it was used in the Doors movie because Jim
Hmm.
Morrison was on the cover. He wasn't on very many covers, but he was so beautifully on this. They put Val Kilmer's face though, and I had seen. I was a huge Jim Morrison fan as a kiddo, and I went through a phase when I was 14. I wish I had pictures of it with the way I was dressing and looking. You would be very surprised, or maybe not. I don't know. And I'd seen the movie a million times, but I got really frustrated after a bad meeting with an advisor years ago, and I just put it on, and then it was there, and I was like, "What? I don't remember this." So yeah,
Uh-huh.
it was really cool.
Speaking of a moment like that, I remember the morning when Peter Jackson dropped the what we call the monkeys reel of the advanced clip from Get Back before Get Back came out.
Oh yeah, okay. Yes, the
Go
Get
for it.
Back clip. So if anyone has seen the Beatles Get Back in issue 2 or in episode 2, they showed John and Yoko reading one of the ones I showed you, which is the second to last teen set with John on the cover, the February cover. But it was also used in the clip, which I thought was so amazing.
All right.
I almost died when it came out. I thought, okay, this is all for Judy. Robert, did we have any? I know it's 8 o'clock,
Mm-hmm.
so I talked a little longer than I meant to. But if I don't know if you have any questions in the
I
comments.
do. I was about to get to him.
Oh,
You
okay,
ready?
cool. And if anyone needs to go, I completely understand.
Mm-hmm. Okay. This one from Kathleen Urbanik. Would you talk a little about your search for sources? It can't have been easy to put together Teen Set's history.
Oh, yeah. I'm lucky Teen Set only has 40 issues. Like I'm so lucky because that issue of Dig I showed you, I can't find. I could barely find a photo of it. I'm very lucky that I have that and I had just saved it. Yeah, it took a long time. It took a long time because I had to wait for people to sell them and to get specific issues that were hard to find, like the Beatles. I was lucky with the December 66 because that's one of the first ones I received, but it was expensive, right? And you know, you pay for your own research often. So I have quite a large collection. Now, I will tell you, um, I got very lucky before I published the book. A person on this call, Jeff Hoganson, he had bought a lot of Judy Sims's personal effects, and then he put them on eBay. And I found him, and I found the stuff, and I bought a lot of it. So I have a lot of Judy's original items, actually. I don't think I have any specifically right here with me, but I have a lot of original photographs now that she owned, an onion skin from one of the very first issues of TeenSet that she did, which is super cool. It's like the layout of the magazine, and it's a Beatles one too, so that makes it extra cool. Letters signed by Derek Taylor. Yeah, and I also had another fan, which I think he's here too, Steve Kern. He sent me a letter that he wrote, or that Judy wrote to him. So over time, I started talking with more and more people and finding out more. I'm sad that a lot of people came out of the woodwork and I found them later, and I wish I would have been able to include their voices in the books. Luckily, I couldn't include Jeff and Steve, though. So yes, it took a very long time. It was very time consuming, and then to put it in a just a whole nother world of all the teen fan magazines and Rolling Stone. It's good that I had already spent a lot of time with Rolling Stone and the rock critics. Otherwise, I don't think I would have noticed this issue and I wouldn't have had a story to tell.
I don't think you're done telling the story with Judy and TeenSet by a long shot. So there will be a
No.
place to go with this.
Yeah. And there's a lot I don't say in the book that I wish I did, but at the same time, there's so much you can say before you need to move on to the next project. And so there are things that I plan. I have an article coming out that's just on community and teen fan magazines coming up soon, and specifically the Beatles. And I'm working more on teen sets and teen fan magazines as a whole history. But that's a great question. It took a long time, and I'm pretty sure, I feel like Kathy's an archivist, so I feel like she knows too how hard it is.
Well, when the documentary gets made, you have to be a consultant.
Oh, Debbie's leaving. Thank you, Debbie. If anyone doesn't know Debbie, she wrote this book. See, now I do have these props with me. Not everyone's, because some are digital, but she wrote this amazing book. She has this amazing adventure in life with the Beatles and beyond. It's called I Saw Them Standing There. So thank you for your voice in the book, Debbie, and for your awesome book.
Okay. Hi to all my friends. So nice to see you all.
So nice.
Great to see you.
To go with Paul to one of his events.
Oh, have fun. Thank you for being here.
I would have rather stayed here. You apologize to all my
my apologies to my apologies to all of you.
Okay.
Oh, thanks.
Bye.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Bye. You know what,
Okay.
guys? If you don't know, she was at the very first Ed Sullivan show. You can see her screaming in the screen, like on the clip, and I think it's All My Lovin', right?
Yeah. She's the first cutaway to the audience after they start playing.
Yeah, she's so
that's
cool.
her.
What a cool
Wonderful,
person.
wonderful.
Thank you, Robert,
Yeah.
for that connection, by the way.
Sure, absolutely. So this is from JP. This may have been mentioned, but does Dr. Bumsted, I guess that's you, or anyone on this call have all of the 50 issues of TeenSet magazine? Is there any plan to digitize them? So that's along the lines of what I was asking. I want to read this stuff, but I don't feel like spending hundreds of dollars on eBay.
Yeah, so I am working on that. I do have all the issues, and I have done a crude digitization of all of them. It's something that I am working through. I have not offered them up to anybody yet, or I'm deciding where I want them to go and how I want them to look before they are out there. I've thought about putting them on my own site, but I think they could look better. I want them to be better than what I did, so I had access to them and didn't have to carry them overseas. So yes, they do exist. I do have all of them I think I have all of them 3 times. And some of them, I'm actually not sure about this. This is something I'll have to ask Jeff, because some of them when I got from him, I wonder if they were Judy's or if they were just part of his collection. And then I have ones that belong. Who's the fan? Is it Paul Gorsuch?
Oh, you talking with the London guy?
Yeah. I have some of his. I only have half of his though, because I did not bid enough to get the rest. But yeah, they took a long time to collect, but I am working on digitizing them. Yeah, I mean, I have them digitized. I want them to be better before I release them. But yes,
Gotcha.
I don't know if anyone else here does. There's a chance. Debbie might. She definitely would have the Beatles ones.
And she's a keeper.
Yeah.
All right, this is from Sibby. Did Judith Sims know Eve Bablist of LA? She knew all the players, created album covers, and was well acquainted with the art world and the link that you know of.
Yes, I don't know how they knew each other, but I do know she knew Eve Babbitts because Eve Babbitt's work is in TeenSet. See, I can't talk about everything, but yes, Babbitts is really cool. She did a collage for Buffalo Springfield in the magazine. To the extent I don't know how they knew each other. These are still things I'm working on just to get the basic story out. Judy didn't have any children and moved out of LA quite a while ago before she passed in, I think, 95 of cancer. So I didn't get to talk to her, although I feel like Jeff said when he sent me that unseen picture that she was sending us a message. And I wanted her to be on the cover of her own book. But she did know her. I don't know exactly. You know, there's some people that I thought really would have known Judy and remembered her. I asked Ann Moses of Tiger Beat. She didn't know her, which was surprising to me because they hung out at the same places around the same time. And Pamela DeBar didn't know her either, which I was kind of surprised because she was on the cover of her magazine. It doesn't mean that they have just forgotten it. That could be the case. Like, it doesn't mean that they didn't know her, but I'm still working on that. Now, Joel Salvin did, and he has given me some information. Ben did. and a few others, but I'm still piecing together Judy. I can tell you that she moved to LA from Iowa, and there's a good chance she got a divorce right when she moved there, but she never told anybody. And honestly, it's not something I put as a footnote. I don't really highlight it. I only put it as a footnote because her name changes in the magazine in the first few issues. It goes Judith Cannon Sims, Judith Sims.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So Sims is her birth name?
Yes.
Okay.
1939.
Wow. Okay. Here's
From
a comment.
Illinois.
Where?
She's from Illinois originally.
Really? And she went to Iowa?
Well,
That's backwards.
Hey, my family's from Iowa. Okay, go ahead.
All right. Comment here from Thomas Pace. Here in Cleveland, we have the Jane Scott archives. And as far as I know, there's no collection of her reviews.
Wait, in the Jane Scott archives, there's no collection of Jane Scott's reviews. Is that what you're saying?
That's what he's saying here. Yeah.
What I'm saying is there's no published collection of her reviews like there are with like other well-known rock critics, and she's the first significant rock critic of the 60s.
Yes, Jane Scott is very important. She wrote for, was it the Cleveland Dealer? Is that what it's called?
Cleveland Plain Dealer. Yeah.
Plain Dealer. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So Jane Scott is one that, and I did mention her that she does need to be talked about more. They called her the grandma of like the grandmother of rock and roll.
Yep.
And because she was a bit older, and that was just so uncool, right? But she's a very interesting person, and you would think that these would be more public, but no. We just need to get on. There has been stuff written about Jane Scott by what's her first name? Her last name's Weinstein, though. I know that.
So with Gloria Stavers and Ann Moses, I would think that a woman editor of a magazine like this is not that unique. And yet when we think about rock journalism, which I guess is distinct from journals celebrating fandom, that's where the compartmentalization happens. But it seems like maybe she was painted with too broad a brush, because what she in fact is doing is journalism. So I'm wondering if in real time, did you get any sense that she knew what she was doing was groundbreaking?
There was one piece I focus on where she gets really, she was very emotional in her writing, and she talks about how she's tired of being told she's not heavy enough, and she calls it a feminine perspective, and she's like, maybe it's just what I think, like man, and try, with the lingo in it, and it's really interesting. And she's like, why do I have to be so heavy? Why can't I just share good information about people I like? And you can tell in the way, this is one of the things I talk about in the book, is how she reports on Janis Joplin. She goes drinking with Janis Joplin and the band, Jim Gurley and whatnot, and the way she reports on Janis is very different than how Rolling Stone did, as Norma Coates and others point out, when they call her the Judy Garland of rock, right? So it's just a very different way of looking at things. Now, I couldn't really say feminine perspective because that's really hard to say what that means, right? So
sure, they're not monolithic.
So we really call her what Chet Flippo calls her, which is a cultist, which is a term used by Andrew Saris and later developed into rock criticism by John Landau, that she was a person who was devoted to music. And there's some criticism. I think that's the point, is that when it lacks criticism, is it serious? Well, by what she's including, I think, and not including is criticism in its own right. But yeah, she definitely came from a perspective with an opinion, and she let her readers know. She would call them out specifically over the more popular than Jesus thing. She told them to grow up, and that shouldn't we care about the music, and what does it matter? I really don't think John Lennon's going to replace Jesus, and then all of this stuff. So it's quite interesting. She was very into it. However, I knew there's an issue, I can't remember exactly which issue it's in, that there's an article that talks about, and I think it's Pete Johnson. He's another rock critic who writes it. I could be wrong who wrote it. There's so many things to think about in my brain. But in that issue, they actually have a story about rock journalism and it on the rise. And it says "The Men Who Give Us Their Opinions," I think is the title of it. But they're covering it in real time, right? And,
when was that from? Do you happen to know the year?
I think it's late 68 or early 69. It's right around there. I have the article. I can send it to you.
Yeah. No, I'm just curious, because it just seems that's amazingly prescient.
Well, she actually, and if Dawn's on this call, I don't know if Dawn Armstrong is here, but if she, and I said there's an Easter egg, there's a lot of footnotes that have a lot of good information. I wish I just didn't do any footnotes because they're so interesting. But she calls Ralph J. Gleason a year before Robert Christgau calls himself. She calls him the dean of rock criticism. So that's where it
It
first
means
is.
more when somebody else calls you that when you call yourself that.
Yeah, and well, she at least publishes. I'm not sure if she's the exact one who says it, but I think that's very important. These rock critics like to sometimes. I love them. Don't get me wrong. I could read those things all day. I find them very entertaining and very interesting. But yeah, the history was pretty damning towards teen fan magazines, and she knew that. She would criticize 16 sometimes in her own right, but she also didn't have the pressure Gloria or Anne Moses did, right? So she wasn't working for someone else in the same way, right? She was pretty much like, here, this is making money, well, just viable, keep going with it, and she got to do what she wanted, and she did.
Yeah.
She got to do what she wanted. She could have probably turned it into something that lasted longer, that considered, the top 40 only. One of the other things that really shows TeenSet, like in that evolution I talked about from 64 to 69, is in chapter 5, I talk about the record reviews, where it starts off like, hottest thing in town, listen to Roger Miller. And it's like, what? To the very end of the magazine, where they actually had a record, thanks, Donna, where they actually had a record reviews sections. And it actually took time to really think about these records and as artists, as his own artistry and as a complete album. But it shows that shift, which Rolling Stone didn't, right? Because it came later, so it already was in it. Crawdaddy couldn't have, because Crawdaddy was, mimeographed in a basement and stapled together. It wasn't what it becomes later. It wasn't distributed in the same way, but Judy was doing it, man. It's cool. And she's onto something, because at the very end, all of the rock critics, a lot of rock critics who are writing for Rolling Stone are writing for TeenSet as well.
Wow. What was the tone like of the reviews?
They become a little more in depth each time. We start with, like, in the middle of the existence, like Dylan saying, we need more to say, really, like we need to talk about it more, and the cover, they acknowledge the cover, and towards the end to where they're comparing it to like different records to Sgt. Pepper and why they're of importance. And that's one really, really interesting thing to see. And it was one of my favorite things to map out as I went. But that's as the word pop changes. As rock is seen more, as rock is seen as more authentic and whatnot,
Yes,
as we go forward. And so that folk ideology seeps into the genre of rock. Again, this is very complicated because I had to talk about genre too. So I got very good at genre theory.
I say you've done a ton of research on this and presented on this. Yeah. I was curious because it's even in the earliest issues of Rolling Stone, you if you try to look at them objectively as you're reading them, especially at a distance removed, the editorialization is crystal clear. It's not like they're necessarily trying to do an honest review of an artist's work so much as they are making a statement man, which we know is absolutely the case from the books that have come out about Jan Wenner since then, where positive reviews of artists out of favor were scrapped wholesale so that they could do something scathing because it fit their editorial position.
Look how they reviewed Wings. I mean, that was my first publication.
Oh, yes.
That's where all of this started. I mean, I picked up on it pretty quick. I just didn't know that I just didn't know about TeenSet, and I didn't know about all the women. That's one of the writings on 16 refers to Gloria as the only female editor, and it's so many. But you also have to remember, women weren't being hired as editors or writers or anything else. Oh, thank you, Sibby. I know it's we'll wrap it up in a few. Thank you for being here. Sibby's book is awesome too. My private
yes, it
linen.
is. My private linen.
Yeah,
it's in my pile here next to me.
It's really great. Thank you for being here. She also was at an Ed Sullivan show, a different one, but still there.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I got a picture to prove it.
Yeah. What was I saying? I forgot my train of thought. That's okay. I'm not sure where I was.
Okay. I don't either. It's just too many thoughts in my head that need thought. Was there anything contemporaneous that you can point to or make any kind of comparison that would have been their competition? Obviously, under her leadership, they're not competing with Tiger Beat 16. That's a different animal completely.
No, yeah.
So they're singular.
Yeah. I would say that Judy was really into like Cheetah. You could tell by the way she writes. She was into a cultural magazine at the time, and I think that started to seep into. They had some movie reviews. They reviewed Hair, and the play, and others. I think that that's where she was going towards, because she talks about how they've all disappeared, but she doesn't know why. Well, it seems maybe why was because they weren't selling in a way, but in the teen world, it was different. And when I asked Debbie about it, specifically, and I talk about this in the book, she knew it right away because she remembered Judy's ability to be close to the Beatles. And Judy was. I mean, she went to EMI during the recording of Sgt. Pepper and hung out. There's a picture of her that circulates where the Beatles are playing, and there's a TeenSet of Peter Tork on the thing, which I love that that's the one.
And the White Album sessions as well.
Yeah, she was there, right? She was there. And she did have this ability. She was close with Derek Taylor. She made the right friends, and and I think that did a lot for her. Like I said, anyone who's really known Judy, John Mendelsohn, the rock critic who pans, was it Ram? Does he pan Ram? I think so.
Abbey Road too, right?
Specifically said to me that he wasn't interested in talking about the past, but he would talk about Judy. Right. So
wow.
I think that's really important. Judy does go on to work for Warner Brothers in a publicity role that actually John Mendelsohn let go of. And she becomes a LA bureau chief with a masthead for Rolling Stone, writes for Rolling Stone for quite a while. And in the 80s, she writes for the LA Times and does other work too. But this is stuff I'm still learning about her as I go forward.
It would have been fascinating to get her perspective on what she did in the 60s. As she got older.
I keep hoping she'll come talk to me somehow.
Yeah.
She's become my hero for sure.
Yeah.
My rock hero.
So that there wasn't any real competition doing the same thing. It's amazing that the right person was sort of given this blank check when she gets brought in to shape it in her image.
Yeah, Jamie Milstead says in an interview, I think with Richard Jack Morton, that she was offered it originally, but she was already doing Teen Screen, which Teen Screen's a good one too, especially for the Beatles. Yeah, I like Teen Screen. Yeah, but I mean, it's not as radical, but it does have some really cool stuff in it.
Is there much music, or is that a Hollywood thing?
No, there's a lot of music because these stars, including the Beatles, were in movies. There's a lot of music in it. It's not just they really embrace the teen fan and kind of out of the Hollywood stuff. But she said that she couldn't do it, and so that's when Kimsey was like, "Hey, Judy, you like music? Why don't you do it?" So cool. But she must have had some snap, right, to have that offered up to her right away, which I think is pretty incredible. Yeah,
it's brilliant.
Yeah,
and Capitol washed their hands of it by 65.
Yeah, pretty much. Right when they handed it over, it was announced in, I believe, in Cashbox or Billboard. Oh, it's one of the two magazines that they were in for a Bantam Bonanza, which already we have an issue with that comment because we're talking about little tiny chickens or fowl, right? Right. Going into the teen magazine, they're going to a Bantam. They spelled it wrong, but that's okay. Anyways, they let go of it. They were successful and thought, oh, we've already started it. Let's just keep it going. And it took a while to get off the ground. We only have one other issue in 65. But it does have the story of the fifth Beatle, Pete Best, in it, which I thought was really cool. Because again, she has these connections with Brian Epstein, which is also very important. Because there's one other thing I want to say is, like, Brian was sent a lot of stuff by fans. Mark Weinstein, who had taken photos of Beatles I think at Candlestick Park, sent him photographs, and he sent them to Judy and published them. And I don't think he ever knew they were published.
Oh, wow.
But he is credited. He sold the photos a few years ago. Yeah.
Huh.
But never mentioned
at the last show?
Yes. Yeah. He didn't. He said the photographer ran out of film, and he just snuck on the thing with film, and he took pictures. But anyways, but she had the photos in there. So there were a lot of cool things, and those connections really helped her, I think. But also, she just was awesome. Like I think she just had an attitude of. She says in '87 that after she got off the freeway to San Francisco on a 7-hour drive from Hollywood, she was ready to roll, man. She just wanted to be part of that scene. And luckily, because Jeff sold a lot of Judy's stuff to me, I have all her original, like, Fillmore, East and West postcards that came to her with all the patterns and designs.
Oh, man.
And yeah, it's pretty cool. I have a pretty cool collection of her stuff.
That's pretty
Hopefully
amazing.
it will be an exhibit.
Yeah, hell yeah. Nice comment here from Candy Leonard. The real mystery here is why she didn't change the title to something that reflected what she was doing.
So, Candy, you make a great point. She talks about how she hates the name in the 70s, how she hated the name, that they couldn't agree on anything. And so she picked but called it America's Under 30s. She wanted to sound like the mantra, the hit mantra, but also make sure that you knew it was a cultural magazine that was more than just a teen magazine. But she didn't like the name. And that's as much as I know. That's as much as I know, but she didn't like it. Bye, Fran. It was really nice to see you. Thank you. Yeah, we should probably take maybe one more question and let people go have their evening because it's getting
Well, I
late.
was just going to comment on something you said earlier about the pressure being put on her to get heavy. I'm thinking to myself, what's
Mhm.
more heavier than a teen magazine oriented toward music, writing about the Black Panthers with Hendrix?
Or
How
like
much heavier should you go?
there's a book called by Michael Benson called Why the Grateful Dead Matter, where he's like, even the teen magazines thought the Grateful Dead, they were duped, thought they were going to be the next teen sensation. Proof is in the pudding. Look at TeenSet. And it's like, did you read the article? And did you know who took those photos? Those are Jim Marshall photos. Like, come on. And if you don't know Jim Marshall, guys, I have one of his books here. You've seen his work somewhere. This is one of his incredible, like, fancy books, but his work is there. He is giving the finger right there. I encourage you to buy this book if you ever do, but his work from Monterey Pop and everything else is in here. And these photos were taken on assignment for TeenSet.
Yeah, we know those pictures. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Of Grace Slick and Janice Joplin.
Is that a Taschen book?
No, it's Chronicle Books does all their books. I have the Rolling Stone book that I just got, but I like I think this Chronicle Books does all Millie Davis and Jim Marcus books.
I almost worked for them once.
Yeah.
That's cool. Amazing. All right, Fran left. Mr. Right should change his name.
Well, if anyone, I completely understand. So if we want to just maybe, if there's any more questions or if anyone wants to.
Christine, that must have been the main frustration, that the magazine wasn't going to be seen as heavy or serious because of the teen part of the title. Yeah.
When you read what she writes, she's so frustrated and upset by it. It's really obvious that it's a large editorial. I'll show it to you. It's a really interesting. I actually talk about it. I think I published most of it in the book. I put in a lot of quotes. Now, I thought about cutting them back, but again, not everyone has access to this stuff, and I wanted them to be able to see it. And
No,
the press
it's
was
great.
so gracious in with the grant to do the color inside, which is
That's unbelievable. That's fabulous.
unbelievable. Did not
Yeah,
expect
I mean, that somebody, Mr. Two Star, is lamenting that there's not content. Like, for Christ's sake, you're getting a lot
yeah,
for that
it's okay.
book
It wasn't
anyway,
that
in
much,
terms of
again.
covers and photography. So,
Yeah,
you know, what the hell is there to
I'm
complain about?
excited with that. Yeah.
What's next for Dr. Bumsted?
Well, I have an article coming out on community and teen fan magazines, and on Candy's voices in it as well as Debbie's and Kathy's Urbani's and some others. And then a whole history of teen fan magazines is coming, y'all. So if you read anything in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, anything anywhere, 50s, that's harder and harder to find. But I want to go before it's gone beyond living memory, because at least 2 people I interviewed have passed recently, and it's going. I mean, we feel like we're so close to the 1960s, but we're not. It's fleeting, right? It's
No,
going.
see the proof of that every day.
Yeah, we do.
Ken being one. Mansfield.
Yeah. Ken Mansfield, who worked for Apple and the Beatles and
Yeah,
Cadillac.
no, fabulous guy. Very much
absolutely.
missed.
Yeah. Before, I know I still have a lot of people. Oh my gosh, so many. Now I'm actually looking at everyone that's here. I haven't seen it. Oh my gosh, thank you all for being here. Okay. Does anyone else have any, or was there anything else, Robert, that anyone wants to know? Or
Terrific presentation, fascinating. Damn straight.
I wanted to say more. It was 45 minutes when I practiced this morning, guys. And I was like, nope, go. It's too long.
No, this was outstanding. This is something, take it on the road. There's a lot of people that need their eyes opened to what a fabulous history this is that you've presented. And that's why, maybe someday it'll find a home where it gets found on YouTube, or at least in part, because this is fabulous.
Oh yeah, I do have some people who couldn't be here, especially I know there are people from the UK who've said they're here from Liverpool. Thank you.
I'm impressed that Australia's represented.
Oh yeah, thanks, Christine. I lived in Liverpool for a long time. I loved that city. It was a very cool city, and it really taught me so much about the world. Before we go, I want to highlight we need. Oh wait, hold on. I just saw a comment pop up. I haven't been looking at all the comments, so I didn't get distracted. But I've got a paperback. Yeah, yeah. Okay, hold on. That's way far. I need to go. Let's see. Joe here is a Liverpool legend. He was in Benny Profane. He's a Liverpool DJ. We need to read a Sims. I bet Macca has stories. You're right. I have to get a hold of Macca, but I think that will be quite difficult. I know that you have mentioned that to me.
I'm told he doesn't remember 1969.
Yeah. And I love that Kathy here says that I read TeenSet at the time, and everything you said is true. It was the head and shoulders above other teen fan magazines in quality and content. I still think the other ones have a lot of great things, and I hope that came across in my book, because there's still a lot of fascinating things, especially about the Beatles from Neil Aspinall, probably Tony Barrow, but that's okay. Before we go, these are Christine Feldman Barrett blurbed the book, as well as Candy Leonard, and they have amazing books. Christine's A Women's History of the Beatles, as well as she has another book, We Are the Mods. And then if you don't know, Candy Leonard is of Beatleness, which is a great one too. And Robert's, like I'm trying, I don't have everyone's book that's like on my hand. Some of them are digital, so I can't show Sibby's, but this is Robert's book on Revolver and the Beatles. And
That's
then
the old
Ken,
one.
I don't think Ken's here, but he blurbed the book as well. This is one of his many on the Beatles, specifically John Lennon. But I really appreciate everyone for being here. I'm so grateful that you spent your time, even if, TeenSet's this is not your field, not your world. I really appreciate your time. And I thank you for that. But if I have if anyone wants to turn on their mic and say anything and stay, if not, you're more than welcome to go. I mean, you didn't have to stay this long. I appreciate it so much. But thank you so much again. And there are things I wish I could change a little, and there are things that I wish I could add. But overall, I know that's how everyone feels. I've learned this lesson from publishing now. I see Candy going, yes, yes. I was asked something and I was like, well, didn't I say that? They're like, no. I was like, oh, I thought it. So yes, thank you. But if anyone wants to turn off their mic and ask a question, I'm fine with that. Oh, thank you, Kathy.
I just want to say congratulations again. It's a fantastic book, and I just wish you all the best with what's to come from publishing it. So,
thank you, Christine.
Oh,
it means
yeah.
a lot coming from you. Thank you so much. Yes.
How you doing, Christine?
Yeah, good. Good to be here. So lovely to see everyone.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I have Jeff's here, and then Amanda's here. Hi, Amanda. I was a bridesmaid at her wedding. Diane's here. Joe's here from Liverpool. Heather Hardy, who gave me that cool Beatles book. Hi, Clay. Michael's here. Brittany. Hi, Brittany. Is Howard still here? Did he leave? Wait. Oh, I can see more. Oh, I have more people. Rick from London. Oh, there's so many people. Hi, Jeff. Hi, Tracy, Meg. Let's see. Thank you all for being here. If I didn't say your name, I really appreciate that you were here too. Did
Give
anyone
the public
else
what they want.
Huh?
Give the public what they want. You'll get a crowd.
Yeah, I can't. I'm just oh wait. I'm trying to see everybody. It's not letting me see gallery. Okay, gallery view. I'm learning this. Okay. Well, does anyone else have anything else? I mean, if not, feel free to go. But if you want to comment or talk about it, or thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Thank you, Meg.
And congratulations, to echo what Christine said. It's a great book. I loved reading it. And I still cannot figure out how it is that my brother and I, who are so on top of all of this, just did not read this magazine, did not even know about it. And I can only conclude, I think I said this to you in an email, that the name TeenSet is off-putting. I think even at our young ages, it sounds like the name that the adults would give for the youngsters kind of thing, it's someone looking in at it rather than someone who's of it, if that makes sense. I don't know.
Yeah. A bit of condescension.
Yeah. Or marketing or something like, And so when I was reading, I just like, and then when she finally changed it, it was also like, I understand, inclination to do the whole Ohm thing, but like it so doesn't work, right?
Yeah, it doesn't.
It's so
And
out
it's
there.
so obscure, right? So
Yeah.
and I guess I concluded, and things you were saying tonight were kind of consistent with, it's like she was just having so much fun doing this and getting into rooms that she probably had to pinch herself to believe she was in, and having this great time. And like, whatever, it's got to be like she didn't care almost, maybe. I don't know. It's weird. Because with a different thing, it could have still been going on today. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, she does. In an interview with Chet Flippo, she refers to the publishers as assholes. I don't know why I didn't expect that, and then I was like, I have a better idea of who Judy is when I read this, because I mean it's published in there. It's like these men were assholes. They were telling me what they wanted, but I knew, you know, because they had a teenager and I was sick of it, and so I thought that was really really quite interesting. But you're right. I think that she knew it needed to change, and you see it throughout throughout the issues and the editorials, because she's one of the only ones to keep an editorial the whole time. I mean, a lot of people will say, "Oh, well, Gloria Stavers had Gigi's gossip column." I was like, "Yeah, but that's very different. That wasn't Gloria addressing issues that were current, like the more popular than Jesus, or the Vietnam War, or or like the word teen doesn't work for us anymore. We know it doesn't work. Things have changed," and she talks about that, and I think that is so extraordinary that, again, I spent so much I spent so much time in these with TeenSet that it just completely changed my way of how I thought about a lot of things and made me really embrace a lot of things I loved in my youth again. And yeah, I think she's such an interesting figure, and it's too bad it took her this long to be talked about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever brought this up to you before. Slight change of topic, but I first became aware of it when just hunting down any kind of paper I could find that had Beatles on the cover, because you know I collect papers, what I collect. And there was a 67 issue, and it was branded WCFL Teen Set. Now, in the 60s in Chicago, there was two powerhouse top 40 stations, WCFL and WLS. And I just presumed when I stumbled upon it in whatever place I did, I don't remember now, that it was a local publication. And come to find out, when you started on this journey, we talked to Ken Mansfield, I guess there was some kind of Chicago route for Teen Set back in the day. But I had no idea that that was almost sort of an outlier, because I don't know, was there a KRLA Teen Set version? Yeah, okay. So there was like individual cities that branded it to give that sort of local cachet.
Sure, there's a few. Those are the two I can remember off the top of my head. But now KRLA had their own magazine, and a lot of people have asked, why haven't you talked more about that? Well, it's very different. It was a radio magazine first, and it does have female writers, but it started in a different way, and it came right after TeenSet, actually. In that. So
it's fascinating. The KRLA beats.
Yeah, it is fascinating. It needs to be talked about more. But again, I was focused on TeenSet. That's what somebody said. Why didn't you talk more about Hit Parader? It's like, well, Hit Parader wasn't the Hit Parader you liked at this time, not quite yet. And the ones in the 40s and 50s were song lyrics and reprinting. Yeah, they looked like it was very different. Hit Parader, it was very different. Cool. I mean, I like a lot of what Hit Parader has, but that's later. You know,
you're right. It evolved.
Talk about it all.
One way. Right. But how much stories are you expected to tell? You went in deep on if you had to pick one unsung one, you hit the bullseye with this masterwork that has everything going on. It's got a woman visionary. It's way ahead of the curve in what became the norm in rock journalism. It's going heavy, despite what people accuse her of in terms of content, and fabulous presentation and photography. It's like you can't beat it. And the people that they're, I don't want to say the word hyping, but certainly the people who are celebrating, it's not top 40 Bobby Sherman. It's not crap. It's amazing stuff. Zappa and the Dead and things like that.
Lots of Zappa. She was friends with Zappa. There's no denying that. Now, I don't own that photo. I tried to get it, but it sold for like $200. But Jeff, I think you're here. Jeff, are you here? I think he's here. Anyways, I see his Hoganson, so I think he's here. He luckily saved a scan of it, and then the photographer let me use it, so it's okay that I didn't have the copy she had. And I don't blame anyone for paying that much. Man, I'm so glad I'm not spending my money on TeenSet stuff anymore. So it's got so expensive, but it's okay. I'm so glad.
I think
have
you've
so
driven
much
the price
time.
up.
Maybe more recently because it's not fun right now to look at the prices. Any teen magazine, 16, anything is very expensive, very out of reach, because a lot of these magazines were loved, right? So I get them very tattered. I have a few perfect ones, but you know, people
And a
love
lot
to
were
read them.
summarily thrown out.
And they cut them up, and I tried to contact a lot of readers from the editorials, the ones they wrote in the mail scene. But women changed their last names, especially then. So it was really hard. I did hunt down one of them, and at first she was, "How did you find me? That is me, yes." But then stopped talking to me. You know how people get, they get nervous. Like one woman had 25 TeenSets, and I bought some of them from her. And I said, "Can I talk to you about it?" She's like, "I didn't do any of the drugs or anything," and then stopped talking to me. And I was like, "Wait, what? Wait, what? No,
You're
maybe
so
you did
threatening.
because you're not telling me." Time for sleep. Liverpool, you'll be up there, neighborhood, right? Yeah. All right. Bye, Joe. Thank you for being here. Joe is thanked in my book. He was an excellent human being and an awesome DJ and Liverpudlian and Benny Profane member and all that. Liverpool legend. All right. Well,
All right.
I know people are going, and that's totally fine. So if you're still here, please don't feel like you're obligated at this point, or ever. Hope not. But does anyone else have anything else to say? Bye, Joe. Or have any other questions? I'm fine if anyone does. Oh, thanks, Candy. That means a lot from you. Thank you so much. Yes. Okay. All right. Well, I really appreciate everyone's time. And yes, thank you so much. I will show one last thing. I met Pamela DeBar a couple weeks ago, so that's her here. That's her autograph on my.
Perfect.
Yeah, I was the only one with this. A couple of
What was her
people.
reaction to seeing that?
Well, she uses it in her background, so she didn't really say
Oh,
anything, but she didn't. I
okay.
gave her a copy of the book and I said, "Hey, do you remember Judy?" And she said no. But she was really nice. She said, "I don't." I said, "Are you
Yeah.
sure?" And then I showed her a picture and then I said, "This is her magazine." She said, "I really don't." And so that was definitely the Frank Zappa connection. Then that kind of
Yeah.
clarified things for me too. Yeah.
That's awesome. Did you get contact information?
Yeah. She's not hard to contact. She'll respond to you on social media too. She does writing workshops and does talks and all.
Oh, okay. Cool. It'd be nice to get her reaction to the book if she in fact reads it.
Yeah, I hope that, I'll give her time. It takes some time.
Yes,
Yeah.
it does.
I've had some comments about from people who don't typically read academic books, and that's fine. That it took a while to get into it, but once they got to the sections that focus on TeenSet, they were really into it, and I understand that, and that's totally okay. I warn people though, it's a little dense in some areas and others not. That's how it is.
Once you committed to going down this rabbit hole, what was the most surprising thing you uncovered?
Well, I think probably thank you. Okay. All right, Christine. And I think Robert's just getting questions now for the show. So why don't you and I stay on the call, but we can end it for everyone else. And unless anyone wants to hear that answer, then I will answer it. But
I didn't know there was one, but okay.
That's okay. I'll answer this one last one, and then we'll probably go. Thank you, everyone. I see Heather and Spike. What was it? It's probably just my perception of everything. That's probably surprised me the most is TeenSet itself was just amazing. And really the conversation around Hendrix and blues and stuff really threw me off because I thought I knew what I was talking about. And I did. I knew the narrative that I was told.
Right.
And it just, again, shattered my glass there. So, yeah, definitely. So
nice. Well, you convey that. You present that very well. You take the reader on that journey.
Yeah. Again, there's more to say, but there's always more to write, right? So, but Robert, thank you so much for having me. And I want everyone to feel like they can go sleep. It's 8:40. So please feel free to go. Thank you all for being here. And thank you so much. And yeah, thank you for hosting me, Robert.